We're going to talk about some topics today that you may have heard some things about and we want some more clarity. So I'll begin by introducing our guest. In fact, I'll let each guest introduce themselves, starting with you.
Hi, my name is Betelel Aniel. Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Sapora Batsar Yusaskar.
My name is Matana Bat Israel.
And I'm Kohen Omar Ben Eliezer.
Thank you. These are members of the Hebrew Israelite community, and as you can hear from their introductions, they represent a large spectrum of Hebrew Israelite life. We want to start with the sister who is a mother and a wife, and tell us some things about yourself, and then let's hear from you what you've been experiencing as a result of being a Hebrew Israelite in the community in Dimona.
Wow. Okay. I would like to begin by saying we're here today to discuss social problems as well as our personal experiences with our families and what we feel like need to be discussed, because we for so long was not able to talk about nothing. And we know everybody have a lot to say and everybody want to talk about actually what happened to us.
Would you clarify for everybody's knowledge, what do you mean by you wasn't able to talk about things?
Well, in the community, there have been a lot of problems as to why we don't have housing, the merit system, the sisters don't really agree to it, and so forth and so on, all type of social problems. Social problems meaning just the whole lifestyle.
But why couldn't you talk about them?
We really couldn't talk about the real issues because they went against in order to talk about it, we would have to address the preferred order to really talk about what we really wanted to talk about. Now, we could say certain things, but when it came to getting down to the root of the problem, finding out why it's not working, those issues we couldn't talk about because it would make you would stand out as a problem, or you talking about things that God created, that God wanted you to do. God needed you. God said it was a man's nature to have 7 wives. And if you was talking against God, then you was treading dangerous waters because everything was God, God, God. The preferred order was passed on by God.
So now it's no longer about God?
Well, it's still the way they teach it over there. It's the way we teach it in the community, that God lives in Ben Ami. He's the Son of God, and that everything has to be sanctioned by Him, through Him. And anything that's not sanctioned by Him is not of God. He tells you what's of God and what's not of God in the community. Now, of course, I've always believed that God lives in me, and when I'm talking in the same vein of God. But because it would cause so much, what would I call it? Controversy to discuss why I don't feel that a man should have 7 wives, 2 wives, or more than 1 wife. You know, it's different if everybody have their own opinion. But to really get to the problem would cause you to not be able to talk about it. So today we can talk about it. Just want to get to the point that today we're not in Dimona, and we've decided to talk about it so that the saints could start, thinking, to get the saints to thinking again, because we've landed ourselves into captivity, worse than the captivity that we left.
So now you feel like you can talk about the things you believe and feel.
I've always been able to talk about it, but I was stigmatized, talked about, laughed at, joked, put out of meetings, looked at as I was crazy because I would talk past that was permitted.
Okay, so now talk to us about the things that you wanted to talk about that you haven't been able to.
Well, we're going to start with marriage.
Okay.
because that's one of the main ones that landed us in captivity, and the women agreed to this. And in order for them to fix it, they have to be able to talk about it at least and see why we're doing it, where is it taking us, and the benefits of it, or is not no benefits. So personally, my own investigation began in 2006. I joined the committee.
By the way, you did say you married and have how many children?
I was married in the community, and I have 10 children.
10 children.
And I was married for 30 years.
So this should qualify you to talk about this subject.
Okay. Now, what I would like to say about it is the community had become so pressured with the divine marriage concept till a lot of sisters were starting to say, I can't do it anymore. We began releases, more and more divorces, but we could not really get to the root of the problems. We wasn't solving the problem because I divorced and then he take on somebody else. So we were just like switching husbands because there wasn't no new men coming in. So it was just turning into a mess for me, so I pulled out. My best friend married my husband, she released her husband, and then she got married. And then, it was just turning into a mess. I said, I can't get in this because it's crazy to me. So what I did, I'm going back to what I was saying. I said in 2006, I joined a committee of 12 sisters that was to deal with getting to the root of the problem, finding out why. We stirred around in that meeting and in those meetings, and we could not really. We found ourselves not being able to get anywhere. It was like a dog chasing his tail, because we was trying to deal with it within the understanding that it's God sent, and that the men is supposed to, according to their nature, take on more than one wife, definitely, and they could have up to 7. So, unfortunately, which I thought was that I didn't have a sister wife. So early on, I became very.
I just wanted to ask a simple question. Was there any stipulations as to why you would be able to take on more wives? It
was just your birthright. You was born and your nature was to marry more than one wife.
I don't mean what is the birthright? I meant stipulations, like rules that says that you can't do it unless, and you shouldn't do it unless.
Well, yes, it was a rule. The main rule is you can marry one woman, and then a year later you can take on another one. And
what about any financial issues?
The financial issues, it was some. It was in order to marry, you had to be then paid up all of your national responsibilities. You didn't have to be able to take care of the family.
What?
That was never put into question. You had to be then paid up your national responsibilities.
I'd like to add something to that. Your national responsibilities consisted of whatever you were told you had to pay. In other words, like if a brother want to marry a sister, and first of all, nobody has 7 wives or 6 or 5. I don't know if they had a girlfriend or something, but I know they ain't had no 7 wives. But you had to pay up money or monies, huge amounts of money, before you could get married, and you might not even, and in 100% of the cases, you were not presented with a bill. You were not presented with that. You were just told you owe so much money, and there was no records of this. In essence, you had to pay to get married. You had to pay the administration to get married in the community, which really made it to the point where a lot of marriages didn't take place.
Was it supposedly money that you owed?
Yes.
Or was these just monies they out of the clear blue sky?
Well, it was alleged to be that what you owed, but the figure came out the clear blue sky.
Mm-hmm.
So Sipporah, you were saying about the stipulations, what were the rest of those?
Those were the only 2.
Wow.
And that a brother could take on another wife, even if his former wife or wives were in disagreement. But, and the reason why I say that, because many women were in disagreement of a man taking on another wife. And to be very honest with you and be very straight up with you, many women did not accept divine marriage before getting in the nation and were reluctant, but because of the length of their marriage to their husband, or because they had been together for so long and they really loved their husband and they wanted to make a better life, this is one of the main reasons why they even continued on and said, okay, I'm gonna deal with it. And after getting into situations where there was more than one wife, the men or the head of the leadership at that time coined marriage divine marriage, that is the taking on of one or more than one wife, as opposed to plural marriage, and made a distinct difference because it was said that divine marriage was supposed to be in the image of God. Now, and I just have to be very frank about this, there was a very great, strong, masculine overtone in our nation coming from male leaders, and especially the main leader or the spiritual leader, Ben-Ami. All of this was decided upon and agreed upon without the endorsement of any female influence. And the brothers felt that they could have more than one wife if this is what they chose, if this is the kind of society that they chose to build. And of course, I knew that at that time it was about nation building. But then when they created the preferred order of God, where it was God, man, woman, and then children, women then felt that we were below men and that our voice and our word was that below of a man, and only way we could get to God or be accepted and revered by God was to go through that man, so, or have the endorsement of that man. So it was a belittlement to me personally of women in general. So we felt it was our right or our divine woman's personal feeling of being accepted by the Creator to go along with this order.
Did you believe this?
No, I didn't believe it. I sincerely did not believe it because I didn't feel that the system was truly divine by the treatment that I saw of women and our voice not being heard as far as how we really felt about quote unquote divine marriage. To me, it was not divine.
Did your position on this issue, did it develop because of your history of having come out of America where monogamy is the way of life, or was this something that you developed as a result of actually viewing the marital system in Israel?
Well, I felt that I was open enough to want something new and better. And I knew that my life at that point would be towards making something better, not just for me, but for my family. This is what was in my heart. So I said, okay, knowing that you have some overtones from America, that being conscious of that, I was willing to give it a try.
Okay. You're one of the priests. Can you comment on that particular subject from a prophetic standpoint?
Well, when we look at the history of our people,
Right, because in Africa, for ages, it's been more than one wife.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the culture of over 2/3 of the world right now. And it became, these Western overtones followed us into what we thought was a way to build, because we had to have children to build. Then we had the population of more women than it was men. So that was one of the things that prompted this, because there was maybe 2 women to 1 man or 3 women. The largest population was women and children, and men were in a minority. So this added to that. But I have to go back to the structure of the divine marriage was not taught. The counseling was not given to the couples. A lot of times it was my friend or favoritism, or you could actually in some cases pay your way through, with favoritism, because there was a lot of nepotism in the community, and it still exists, respect to persons. So if it was almost, this was real cunning type of manipulation of the family structure, because, see, families were brought together, but it was like a rotating thing. And then families were broken up, and you cannot have a community if you don't have families, structures. And the families, it would be the whim of the individuals in the community. If they didn't like an individual, male or female, then they would work on them. Now you got to understand what we're talking about, and the people in the community know this. Families were broken up, and the children were just left parentless. And this created some of the problems that later came out as the children grew. And if you didn't have a strong structure, you wouldn't have father or mother, and this resulted in what we have now. And the people know it. We left a country to build a better world. And the things that we say taking place, we didn't have the social scientists. We had the minds. We had those that had the forecast and the wisdom to do it, but it was all sanctioned by one man. He confirmed everyone that was going to get this breaking up of the family. Now, we gave one man too much power. You don't do that. I'm telling everybody, we gave Ben Ami too much power. And the power that he used and exercised, that he manipulated himself into, spread far and wide. And we see that everywhere where the community is right now, that we don't need to call this the kingdom of Yah. We need to call this place in Dimona, Israel, the cult of Ben Ami. It's a cult. Wow. I want to define that. Okay. This is a cult, and everybody needs to read the word cult, because I'm defining it as a cult, because he has the same characteristics as a Jim Jones. Now, and he's a man that's he's evolved into a state where he's went from the Prince of Peace, now he's declared himself the Heavenly Father. And the first commandment says, I'm the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. But people look to Ben Ami as he's the intercessor between Yah, God, and the people on the whole planet Earth.
That's a very interesting analogy. Having lived in that circumstance, do you agree or disagree with what the Kohen has to say?
May I ask a question before y'all get into all of that? I'm not from Dimona. I hadn't lived there for 30 years, such as yourselves. I'm from Chicago. I'm a Hebrew from here. And I married into the family. And so my particular perspective is from an outsider's perspective. But my particular perspective, I want to know as much as I can, as best I can, because my children will be raised up inside of this conversation. The last thing I want is for my daughter to accept this as her ideology, her philosophy, her belief system. because I was raised to not have a religion in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I was raised to never participate as if there was a deity other than something speaking through me. So from my perspective, I would love to hear the rest of this conversation.
I just want to add one thing, that the children, see, at this point, we represent, the three of us, we represent 100 years of living in the land of Israel, our combined time there. And 100 years from now, I wouldn't want our great-great-grandchildren to suffer the injustices and this distorted mindset and deify someone that is not, that has promoted himself. I'm actually saying these things because, and I've taken on the obligation to do this, to sound an alarm, because if we don't care for our children's then they're going to make the same mistake. If we don't know our history, then we're going to repeat it again and again. And the next charlatan that comes along with a story about the Bible is going to wrap our people up again. Our people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And the line between deception is very thin. And we've all been guilty of accepting this just based on the dream of building a nation, a community that was upright. But what we've seen evolve over the decades has turned into a worse oppressor than we said we left from, to be oppressed by our own people.
That's an important point at which I want to defer to you, Martina. I think you had something that you wanted to say relative to the question.
Well, all of what Kohen is saying right now is definitely very, very true, and it helps us to understand that in the shaping of this community or this lifestyle, that we were actually not being very scientific, because when we speak about issues such as marriage and we look at the results of this marriage with more than one wife, and how many families could you actually say in the community are happy as a result of this setup? How many children that were in those families are happy or satisfied with this setup? And this is how I began to form my conclusion that something went wrong and something is not working. And women were afraid to speak up and voice their heartfelt opinions about what was actually happening in the families, because you can actually begin to see a breakdown, not just in the families, but in the minds of the children as a result, because this is what's leading to the moral issues that we face as parents from our children.
When you talk about the problems that the community face, and the children in this case, is it based on the fact that there is a marital system where a man can have more than one wife? Is that the reason for the problems, or is the problems from some other source, and not just one of the issues?
Answer that.
I just want to add one thing before you say that.
Because we got off the subject.
See,
We got way
I
off
want
the
to say
subject.
this, that we've all heard what God has brought together, let no man turn asunder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying this, if nobody else will say it, that Ben Ami, if he does not like you, and the people in the community know this now, I'm not lying, and I stand on his tongue and tell him this, he will have your wife or the husband come, and he will into his private chambers and turn their opinion based on a religious concept against, he divides each other, he divides the family. He'll divide the wife from the husband from the wife, the children from the parents. He's running this just like, I mean, this is something that's deeper than, I mean, it's a deep psychological thing when people look at him as God's representative on earth. Because God's representative on earth has a prophetic description. And he does not fit that description. He does not fit the title of the shepherd that is spoken about, that if one sheep went astray, would he not leave the 99 and go after that one sheep? Because when we go back, as great as they speak of Moses in the scriptures, he had to be doing something that was out of the ordinary, past all of the great things that is said, is recorded that he did, that he needed 70 elders to come and help him mediate these things because it was too much for him. He was one man, but then he was given 70 men to help him mediate these things. Their names are not down or nothing like that, but the problems were so great. But Ben-Ami is God in the flesh. That's what he teaches. That's what he's allowed to be taught. And he slipped into idolatry. And I got to say these things. He's let the people call him God. He didn't correct. I ain't God like that. But he let it continue on, and he continued to deify himself. So these are the things that are dangerous, that we cannot let our children slip into this abyss, into the next 40, 80, 120 years, that they never again slip into this mindset of one man in an idolatrous mode over 50 people. He separated all the family. Every family been touched.
I'd really like the rest of you to comment on what he's saying, because you've either experienced it and seen it or you haven't. What do you think about what he just said relative to Ben-Ami?
Well, I think the merit system has been a tool to keep the nation weak, because if you look at the way he's used this, you know, first of all, I would like to go back and say that this divine marriage, plural marriage, more than one wife, 7 wives was the limit, but any man is allowed 7 wives. Now, we got some with 5 and 4, but we never got to 7 that I knew of.
But that wasn't Ben-Ami's setup.
That was Ben-Ami's setup.
No. Polygyny has been part of African culture long before Ben-Ami. What I wanted to really ask you about was things that the community is involved in.
No.
Not the history of things that long before the community was formed.
I'm talking history about Africa and all that. I'm talking about in the Hebrew is when you come into the community, and when they go out to get people to come into the community, they let you know that here in this community, you can have 7 wives.
Okay. In
this community, the Hebrew Israelite community sells that and tells people that when they come into this community, this has been ordained by Ben-Ami. So I assume that the Nissikim had set together and agreed on this. But as I investigated, I found that the Nissikim just received the order, just like we received the order, that you can have 7 wives and you need to get you some wives. It's not that you can just have it, but
I
in
testify
order
to that.
to be a brother in this kingdom and to be an outstanding brother, you need to get you some wives. And the brothers that did not have but one wife were really kind of teased or joked about and told, man, you get you some wives. You marry these sisters, you know. So, and this is pushed in this community. Now, I don't really want to go all off into what happened in the Bible, because that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here today. I want to stay focused on what I want to get this out before this hour is up. I want to say that the half plural marriage kept the nation weak. When the nation is weak, everything is weak. Because what it did was the women became weak because they didn't have a husband because he was with somebody else. And then the children became weak because they didn't have neither parent, because the mother was always depressed and trying to work on getting her man so she couldn't be into the children. And the man was always trying to cultivate new relationships. So it kept everybody weak. So there was no strength being grown, no families being maintained, because it made division in the family. Because first of all, a man was able to take on another wife, like Montana said, even if I didn't like the woman. And then I was not only told that I wasn't a good sister by men, but I was also told by women, is that you need to work on your spirit, Akoti, because you're jealous. And you need to change your attitude. Like they based it like it was all about jealousy in the bedroom. You could not cry and say, well, I want him here for my children, or I need him for me, or you was to be looking selfish. Your sister need a man. And so we played all into this because we was bombarded with not wanting to be selfish and bombarded with not wanting to be jealous-hearted. So we pushed ourselves and accepted these women in, and we all resulted in unhappy marriages because none of us had the man.
So therefore, what you're saying is that this marital system
Doesn't work.
Did not.
But
It
no,
did not work.
not only did not work. See, because I'm looking from a broader perspective. This marital system, in your opinion,
Created
is the
single
root.
women and fatherless and parentless kids.
No. But it is the root of the problems in the community. If we resolve this one issue, it will resolve most of the issues.
No, I wouldn't say that.
No,
I
that's not
wouldn't
what
say
you're saying.
that. I would
Okay,
say
but
that
that's the
it's-
reason why I was
that's it.
asking.
It
The reason why I was asking that question, was because I thought we were discussing the issues that's permeating.
And this is the main issue. The marriage system created weak people, a weak society. So that's why no one was able to really be strong enough to pull it together to keep the enemy out.
So if we correct
Because the
that
whole
situation, if you
system
correct
was
that, if you correct the marital system, you feel like it will improve the rest of the circumstances.
If you correct the marital system, when first of all we have to agree and be honest with ourselves that I was lonely, I didn't have a man, and that my children, I couldn't say, come, I need you to do this for the child, because he was always able, he had too much on him, and eventually the man shut down. See, we need to talk about this because we will never really understand what happened. The man shut down on everybody in most cases. Most of my friends told me the same story I had. He shut down. Nobody's getting what they need from the man. He's shut down. He's running from the family because when he come to the family, his guilt, I wanted to be with her, but I was with her. I wanted to be with him. I wanted to go with your child, but I had to go with his child. So at some point, the man shut down. It was too much on him. It was not his nature to make 3 women happy, 2 women happy, and 9 kids over here, 7 kids over here. Or some brothers had 3 sets of children. I know families with 4 sets of children, 3 sets of children, 2 sets of children, and even the ones with 2 sets of children fell up under the same thing as the man with 3 sets of kids.
What's the answer?
He could not be here and he could not be there.
What's the answer?
The answer is it didn't work.
No.
That didn't work.
No. What's the answer to the problem?
The answer to the problem is for the man to admit, first of all, that he's not happy and that he know he's cheating his family. And the woman to admit that I didn't need your permission not to participate in something so unholy. I needed to stay focused as a woman on what I needed and been selfish enough to know that it's my right to desire my husband to be here for me, and it's my right to say he needs to be here for help me raise these kids. That was my right, and I didn't need nobody's permission. God gave me that right when he gave birth to me.
Okay,
when he
so
created me.
Okay.
So once a woman knows that she don't need to wait on permission from no committee, from no crown brothers and crown sisters or Ben-Ami, that it's her right to pursue a relationship with a man that will cause her to raise healthy children, and so that she could be healthy. She could go after the needs that she needs to raise a healthy family, so we would have healthy people to contribute to a nation that will be a healthy nation.
Okay, so what you're saying here is that if this marital system was changed back to the monogamous system that existed here in America, that it would resolve those problems.
It would not resolve all the problems of the community. Because the community has all type of problems. Everything in the community is a problem. You are forced to wear the clothes that we wear. If your child is caught outside and he can be 3 years old without fringes on, he's chased back in the house. So the culture is not nothing that we wear because we love it. We wear it because we have to. Everything in the community is forced. The clothes is forced 24/7. The cords of blue and fringes is forced 24/7. Everything is forced. It's forced. You're forced to take on another wife, even if you don't want a wife. I had brothers that didn't want a wife. My husband didn't want another wife, but he was teased into getting a wife. It's not just a black and white. So if we change the community, the marriage system, then we got it. I don't like nobody throwing that on me like that. That's the forced spirit that I've been living up under, what you just did to me. So what you saying, I don't need you to put no words in my mouth, and I'm not trying to raise up on you or nothing. But this is the forcement that everything is under. So before you can get it out, they shooting you with another question, shooting you, and these are traps. And eventually you say, you know what, must speak, I don't want to be bothered with it. Because it's way more than just the marriage system. It's every system in the community is being done wrong.
Can I ask you a question? How would you respond to the sisters who, and I'm sure that there are probably some that agree with plural or divine marriage, and then who disagree? Those sisters are going to watch this tape. How would you respond to the ones who disagree with it? And then how would you respond to the ones who agree with it? And I'm not suggesting that in any way, shape, form, or fashion that you're wrong. Your experience is your experience. Somebody else might experience it differently. But I feel where you're coming from. I just want to know, what else can you say to that person, or, because some of those sisters are going to be listening to this, and they're going to want direction, some kind of strength,
Okay, if a sister comes to me and says, support, well, I don't have a problem with my husband taking on this sister because I love her, and we're going to work together and raise our family. And the man, he has money, he takes good care of all of us, and we don't have those problems that you spoke about. And so what would I tell her? I would tell her that personally, I believe that you're cheating yourself, because there will be days that you're going to need your husband, and you're already lining yourself up to make a sacrifice. Not only you're making a sacrifice for yourself, but you're denying your children the right to a father, because it's not going to be possible for your husband to be there for that child in the manner that he needs to be there for that child. So you're speaking for your child that doesn't have a voice. When he wants to know, why ain't my father here? Because he has to work to take care of two sets of kids and then 2 sets of grandkids. You're not only denying your child of a father, but you're denying your grandchildren of a grandfather, because I've experienced that. My father has children, my children's ages, and he has children, and he never was able to be a grandfather to my kids because he was fathering his own set of kids by a wife my age. And he was not able to be, but he was there in his heart. He wanted to be there. And in his heart, he gave what he could give. But he was trapped in a system where he had to say, he had to lose touch with certain things. He wasn't able to have hands-on with my sons because he was tied up in another whole family. And it just became so thin that I decided that I wouldn't pass this on to anyone that does not know what they're getting themselves into, because at the end of the day, when you don't have the grandfather at the table and at the family reunion focused on his grandsons, then you have all these lost children in the streets. And we have to answer, why do we have so many lost children in the street? And why does everyone decide now they need to drink? Drink for what?
May I now ask Sister Martina the same question? Why, if there were people, sisters, who are there, who are trying to figure out whether or not divine marriage is for them, Sister just told me what she would say to the sisters that love it Well, what about the sisters who don't? What kind of strength or wisdom could you provide for them? And think, your granddaughter, a Javiela, might grow up into this system, into this world. So what you gonna tell her if she say, I don't think so? What kind of strength can you give her?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that just because what I've said about divine marriage in the Kifar HaIvrim, or the Hebrew village, is not working, is from what has actually happened. Now, that doesn't mean that it does not have the potential to work, but I don't see it working under these pretenses. First of all, because the man is not married to his family, he's married to a cult leader. He's married to R.I.P. If the man, Ben-Ami, if the man is in the bed with his woman and they're making passionate love and somebody come knock on the door and says, Abba wants you, the man will get up, get dressed, and go. This has been facts. These are facts. I'm not making this up. So the first love is R.I.P., as Kohen has clearly pointed out. And to me, this is the root of the problem. Because the family do not really become an intimate entity. Now, if it's not happening with one wife, what makes them think it's going to happen with 2 or 3 or however many they think that this can happen? And I don't think this was well thought out as far as telling the man, oh, you can have 7 women. He takes the role of a woman so carelessly and so heartlessly, and then she becomes just an object for having children or doing some work to assist him. Whoa. And not really looking at the human factor that this is a woman. She is just as good as you. She's not below you, not above you. You're not below her, above her. You all here are working together as a team and as partners. Now, if another woman comes and decides that she wants to be a part of this, then it has to be the agreement of the whole. I'm not saying that it won't work. It could, but it could if everybody is together and in total agreement that this is what we want and we're going to work on it. But that hasn't been done.
I'd like you to weigh in on this issue as having been a priest for 30 years, whatever. Speak to that issue.
Well, I have to go back to the reason why this figure 7 women comes up. Because prophetically in the book of Isaiah, the 4th chapter, it speaks of in that day 7 women will take hold of one man and say, let us be called by your name to take away our reproach, our shame. This is what it's based on. It's not based on what Ben-Ami said. This is the prophet Isaiah. And our biblical history that we founded ourselves off of, because I don't throw the Bible out. Because that's the belief system of not only me, but millions of billions of other people. And this is what I go by as a history. And personal experiences are personal experiences for each individual. But when we look at the patriarchs of Israel, they had more than one wife. You know, but in this society, the monogamous society, it became forbidden, even though it wasn't, on paper it was forbidden, but it was practiced. And who taught us the Bible was the main practicer of that. And the first deadbeat dads were not us when we were in captivity, but the slave master. He was the first deadbeat dad. So when we go through history and we build in a family structure, and like I said, it was more women in the community, and I'm not speaking of this in a chauvinistic way, but things happen because the majority of the men or brothers in the community were not taught how to be fathers and husbands. They took it upon themselves, and they were not given a lot of them were not taught responsibility. And then in the early days, people were put together. They were put together in marriages. Now, for marriage, if a family structure breaks down to the point where a brother doesn't know how to calibrate his responsibility or his obligation to his family when it comes to dealing with his children, then he doesn't know how to be a man. When we look at our people, I mean, we got to look at the reality of it, not the ideal family structure or what's desired, but we all mixed up. From the time we left the shores of America, a black man or a black woman might have children by 3 different men. A black man may have children by 3 different women. But in the community, the way it was structured, the perfect structure of it never developed because you had too much outside interference in your relationships. Like the sister said, you had the pros, you had the cons. You had, if a family broke down, then the children were left out to themselves. And nobody had, we didn't have the social mechanisms to absorb this. And then even these separations and counseling in marriages were not, it was just, you were just left alone. If you had somebody, like they have the priesthood, which really, they all need to be dismissed for misconduct. I mean, just because they were never taught. They were never taught how to teach in marital situations. They were never taught because before a man was supposed to get married, his character was supposed to be checked to see if he was responsible and compatible with this sister that he was going to marry. If we lived so close together, if a sister had in her mind, well, I can't deal with it, and he was a brother that wants to deal with that, then the thing is, don't get married to her if she can't deal with it, or because you're going to have a problem. If a sister said, I can deal with it because I need help with my 8 children, and this sister going to come in and help me, because it was some situations where sisters actually felt like this is my family, and I'm going to help deal with this. But the epicenter of the problems that resulted into the marriages came through the decisions of, they went up channels. You know, they say, well, the crown, I'm talking about different levels of leadership did it, but when it came down to should they be separated, the final confirmation came from the head of the community. Nobody could be separated officially unless he signed you've divorced. Now, when you divorce,
you mean Ben-Ami?
Ben-Ami, yeah. Then the children left to themselves, and this is why we have a generation of problems that evolved from these relationships. In 20 years ago, 15, 10 years ago, every year there's separations. There's more separations, and then the children started to raise themselves. So the children, this was declared the decade of the children. But all the children started getting older, and they started moving out on their own. But they started dealing with substance abuse because they started drinking. They started experimenting with weed, and it felt good to them. And they didn't give a care, and they couldn't find work in certain areas. They loved their mother, they loved their father, and they started drifting away. And this is how we lost a whole generation of youth, because the family structure started to break down because we had a lot of irresponsible relationships, whether they were irresponsible men or irresponsible women. And this came through different channels in different ways, because if you had a problem, if you was giving somebody some problems in the so-called government and you were really pricking them, the first thing they want to say is, hey, what's his situation with his wife? Let's start working on her. Or in a case like a sister, she's speaking truth, but she's in this preferred order, then What's her relationship with her husband? We got to start working on him to turn him against her or turn her against him. And forget about the children because they at the bottom of the list. But the children grow up and they become resentful and they carry animosity toward one of the other parent. So this is the situation, how I see that it evolved, studying the dynamics of the community, because we have social problems like any other community. It just didn't stem from the marriage, but the family structure being broken down, that was a great portion of that, the problems that began to emerge in the community.
This is one of the priests speaking about what's obviously a major issue in the community. From your standpoint, is what he's saying does that really express the problem, or is it beyond that?
To me, it's not one blanket situation where it expresses. There are so many problems, and to me, the whole problem is that all of it was Bible based, and all of it was a book. To me, the Bible was a book given to men who wanted to start their own cult, and to anyone who wanted to enslave groups of people.
So you're questioning whether the Bible is the legitimate.
Okay, I don't believe in the Bible. My
Okay.
personal belief is I don't believe in the Bible.
Okay.
And I don't believe in none of it. And the cult, I don't believe in none of that no more. So the whole thing is garbage for me. The whole thing is garbage.
And what's your basis for your position? Is it Bible based, or is it not, or what, relative to the issues on the table?
Well, when you look at the overall situation of the planet, which is masculine dominated as far as governments and countries, so on and so on, I don't think you could go to the United States or even Europe or even Great Britain or any of those countries and say, I can get 7 women. You'll probably be thrown out or looked at like you're crazy or whatever. But
Are you including Africa in that?
Now I'm getting ready to point to Africa. Now when you look at Africa and you say, well, in those societies, there were more than one woman. There was a plural marriage type of a situation. But that is not the same kind of situation that exists in the village, the Hebrew village in Israel. And number 2, you find black women all over the world are stepping up to another level of realization that they no longer want to be part of these type of cultures and societies.
Even in Africa.
Do you have an option that you would offer?
Yes.
Tell me some of the ideas that you would suggest.
Okay. First of all, I want to go back into the point of this masculine male image that has been globalized everywhere. When you look at the Bible, first of all, who rewrote the Bible? A pedophile, King James. And then you look at the different versions and where they derived from. Okay, again, there's this masculine overtone. The Bible does not talk about the 12 women that sat at the side that were also disciples with Yeshua. The Bible does not talk about Mary Magdalene, that was a great black woman that stood by the side of Yeshua. They turned her into a prostitute.
Excuse me. I want you to go back over that, because I've never heard of Mary Magdalene from any other source. Can you tell me the other sources
As far
that
as
brought her to the world stage?
Okay, what I'm saying is she wasn't brought to the world stage. It wasn't until we started to investigate and look into the different writings that actually said what she did in assisting Yeshua.
No, I don't think you understood my question. My question was, for me personally, I've only heard about Mary Magdalene from the Bible. Are there some other writings out here or sources that really go into her?
The Bible didn't really give her the credit that she was due.
Well, no, forget that. What are the other sources? I'm asking for other sources that we can go to and our viewers can go to by Magdalene.
Okay, there are other writings outside of the Bible. There are many books that talk about great black women. I was just using her as a reference. And as far as other writings, I've read it in several other writings. As far as the Revelatorium, I don't know if any of you all are familiar with that. There are many writings that talk about the greatness of Mary Magdalene.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do, because we're running out of time now.
Okay, but I just wanted to make that point because, again, like Sephora said, we use the Bible as a basis for building a culture, but then how many places in the Bible do you actually found the success of these plural marriages?
He picked through the Bible. He didn't use the whole Bible. He picked them through the Bible and found things to fit his personal program in building his cult, like most cults do. Okay,
what it is we're getting close to the end of this period, and I would like everybody, each of you, to have a moment. In fact, we don't even have a moment left. So with that, I'm going to thank everybody for coming and say we'll continue this on the next go-round. It has been very, very lively. And I thank everybody for their participation.